Shouldn't have to.
No.
Hey,
Hey,
we're starting again.
how's it going?
This is number 5. If you've been counting, it took us a minute. But time flies,
Yep.
doesn't it?
It sure does.
So, what are we drinking today?
Today, we're drinking Three Floyds out of Indiana. Indiana? Or is it Illinois? I don't remember. I think it's Indiana.
It says it's not normal on the bottom of it, which is good for us.
I don't know. I guess you got to Google it. Nope.
But there's an
No
otter.
idea. I've been there, though. I don't
there's a-
remember what state it was in, but I've been there.
There's an otter that's prepared for battle,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the
Age of Otters.
Age of Otters.
Yeah, it's a cool bottle.
And it tastes pretty good. It reminds me of that old, one of the beers I had. It was from a brewery called Arcadia.
Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with that one?
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what the name of the...
They're like California.
No, it wasn't. No, Arcadia? No, it was
think so.
here.
Oh,
It was,
no, that's right. Battle Creek.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I played my first, real show.
Yeah.
My metal show there.
Cool.
Upstairs. I was
Mm-hmm.
one of many. I was so nervous, and I sucked really bad.
Yeah.
And not much has changed. So yeah, but it's good beer.
Yeah. It's good
I-
IPA.
If anything, they've mastered the art of
Mm-hmm.
Come on, if you're gonna have a beer, take some time to put something cool on it.
Right. Oh, the yeah.
I mean, some of it's pretentious and whatever, but it's like what? There was a place they changed the name as a family fun park down the road, and it was my son and I are having fun talking about what kind of names we could give this that are just completely mundane. It's like you see an ice cream store called
Yeah.
the Cone Zone, or
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we were laughing about it. Let's call it Stuff to Do. Yeah, I think that was the winner. That's where we.
Stuff to do. Yeah. Swings and slides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
better than what you're doing now.
Random shit on a.
It's like that woman who buys houses. That Gabe buys houses, or Gabby.
I have no idea.
You see these billboards. It's just this woman's face, and it says,
Oh, I'm thinking you're talking about. I don't know why. I thought you were talking about like an HGTV show or something.
"No, just a billboard on the highway."
Yeah.
And I was laughing about that. It's like, how can you get away with that kind of? Is it that important that you can just say, "I buy houses"?
I mean, apparently.
I don't know. I was laughing about that though.
Yeah.
John paints houses.
John buys houses. Yeah. No, I've seen more than one of that too. More than one of those too. Where it'll be like just so and so buys houses.
Great, good for you.
Yeah, I mean, we should have just called this "Therapist Drink Beer."
Well, yeah,
Therapist drinking beer. Yeah.
that might have been better.
It might have been. We tried too hard to be clever, and
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's getting it. Maybe we talked about that before, but the idea that nothing is original. You can come up
yeah.
with the coolest thing. There was about 15 zingers, and I was like,
Yep.
every one of them was taken. It was so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
searching for names. It's
so-
like you think you come up with a good name, and no,
Yeah,
it's already there.
someone with money has already got to
Yeah.
it before you. So,
Yeah.
there was a time I was on a trip from Virginia years ago, driving back, and I came up with this idea of a car that was just covered with harmonicas, and you could have this valve that you could operate to change the pitch and stuff. And I even had the name in my head, Carmonica, or Harmonicar, and I was like, yes, this is cool. I had big ideas for this.
So this is like a car that just has like harmonicas attached
Yeah,
to them.
and
So when
you-
you're driving, the
Yeah.
air is going.
And so, because I brought a harmonica with me on this trip.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But sure as shit, I get home, I look it up, and it's already there.
Are you serious?
It's like a Mini Cooper, and of course it's called the Carmonica. And I was just like, yeah. And so there's been so
It had harmonicas attached
yeah, dude.
to it.
Yeah, it was the same thing. There's nothing that's truly unique anymore. And so, and it seems like that we're all kind of coming to a lot of these things at the same time too. But there's been a lot of ideas that come back, and
Yeah.
it's like, no, you're no longer the creative guy,
Mm-hmm.
in your neighborhood. There's somebody else that's doing the same thing, coming up with the same thing. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, but that's okay. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
not
way it's always
I'm
been.
not special.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No, there's not, dude. And the more connected we get, the more evident that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I'm getting to the point where I'm almost like tired of, I don't know, this is kind of off topic, but I'm tired of all the embellishment of things. I'm tired of pictures of celebrities looking cool, having, cigarette smoke thickly, rolling out of their mouth, and the perfectly lit sort of things. And it's like, I don't know, it's all just a big advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, our world
It's
exists in this little box, and nothing is really organic. It's all manufactured, and the only way we pay attention to this stuff is if it has that high sheen on it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of, let's have some, like I talked about before, let's have some ugly conversations. Let's listen to a song that somebody's just belting out that's just off key and not auto tuned.
I mean, kind of that's almost kind of what grunge was about, right? You had the hair bands of the 80s and early 90s with, everyone's all done up with makeup and like glammed out, and then like Nirvana comes along and like plaid shirts and ripped pants going, just
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess, yeah, they moved from but then that became the new image that we all abide by.
No.
But I was thinking about that. I was listening to, I think it's a Guess Who, American Woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, when I heard the riffs and like the backbone of it was Spoon Man. I mean, like just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
At the time too, I never really thought that the Seattle thing was really cutting edge, because I mean, it was just, it's hard rock. They just maybe down-tuned their guitars and turned up the gain on their amps a little bit and had a different image to it. But it's almost like they took rock and roll and added like a little more of a metal kind of edge to it, made it a little more aggressive, and that was it. But if you really take a look at the nuts and bolts of this stuff, it's just hard rock.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking about just what was popular.
I get you. Yeah, I mean, it was, I guess, more like an image change more than anything. But
yeah, I'm just saying, because you're talking about how everything's all, fake
Yeah.
and polished, and we just need to like go the opposite direction.
yeah, we get sick of it. And that's the cool thing. We talk about AI and stuff. We're going to get tired of things being perfect.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. Well, if I'm not original, then somebody else
Yeah,
is
well, I mean,
thinking
then
of it
the
too.
AI will just figure out how to present itself as, as organic and unpolished and all that. It's just gonna adapt. We're back into this. We're back into the last.
No, we're not going to do that. But you need to stop picking on me about my herpes. I got a cold sore in my mouth.
Yes.
I had a rough couple
I didn't
days.
pick on you. I just asked you. I've never noticed it
You were
before.
worried about your microphone.
Well, when you're telling me you're beatboxing,
It's because you asked me
whose
that.
microphone are you beatboxing on?
You'll never know.
Yeah, well, I might.
I just swapped the beers when you weren't looking. You'll never know.
Oh, except we're recording this, but yeah.
Oh, you're going to go back and look at it. So this is the kind of funny banter I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This is what's going to get people going. So,
So you put out a little, what do you want to call it? Lesson?
a short. Short lesson, metaphor,
Yeah.
thought. Yes, about a house, about early shelter, about the coping skills that we develop early on in life when we have limited skills, limited knowledge, opportunity, intelligence, sometimes being in chaotic environments. And so, yeah, that's kind of it's a really universal thing.
How did you come up with this metaphor?
Oh, geez. How did I come up with it?
Yeah.
Well, someone's already came up with it, I'm sure, somewhere out there. But I don't know. Well,
How did you discover it?
how did I discover it? I don't know. It just seemed like a good thing. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just working with people, and you kind of see the things that they put on or the ways that they deal with things, and it's just a good way of looking at it. I mean, I don't know how it came on, but really just through working with people, particularly the prison population, there's a lot that you build on your own. I think, some of it has to do with friends that I lived with,
Mm-hmm.
or not lived with. Well, I did at some point live with some of them, but observing some of the guys growing up in these crazy houses with no stability, and watching them try to figure out how to get their needs met in the ways that they knew. But you see this over and over again too with the prison population. It's like they're all part of this culture that's characterized by abuse, neglect, poverty,
Mm-hmm.
addiction, and so yeah, what do you do in that? What do you do to survive? And really, yeah, and that's the characteristic that ultimately I came to at the end. That's the one thing that stays with you is your ability to survive and be resilient. But and we all do it to some degree, and we all hold on to those initial ways that we learn how to do things. Some people carry those things throughout their whole lives
Mm-hmm.
and don't ever. I don't know. The consequences just don't get to them. Maybe they're that clever. They fooled themselves. They fool a handful of people around them to keep going along with the narrative that keeps them
Mm-hmm.
from the responsibilities of having to confront.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they're a kid, and if you're growing up in in pot a neighborhood that's extremely poor, like those are the people you're around all the time. Uh, Other people behave the same way. They, it's understood,
Hmm.
these things that you do to survive and whatnot because other people are doing them too. But it's when you get old enough to where you got to like start trying to get into the real world, and if you actually want to whatever have a normal quote unquote
Hmm.
life in the regular world with a job and so and all that these things don't work anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah, because they work in that kind of in this community that's poor and that people use the same tools to survive, but then they don't work in
Hmm.
this community and like the regular, more dominant culture.
Well, I'll give you an example of that. You hear, and you've probably come across this. You'll have a guy who has done a lot of time in prison, has been really conditioned by that environment, and then they go out into the community,
Hmm.
and what the norm was, what the code was
Hmm.
in there is completely different on the outside. So
Hmm.
you'll have somebody getting confrontational with a dude, and a guy pulls a gun, and everyone's like, "Whoa, dude, hold up!" But then there's been other guys that have taken it even further and
Hmm.
have killed somebody because,
Hmm.
hey, when you threaten me
Hmm.
in this environment, that means I'm gonna die.
Right.
And so I imagine there's a lot of different cultures throughout the globe that impacts people in a
Or at
similar
least
way.
if you disrespect me, then that's going to make me lower my stature in front of
Yeah.
everybody else, and
Hmm.
then that can be a life or death situation, or it can be a your life is complete shit and like you're just you know
Yeah, it's open season on you in a lot
right,
of
exactly.
ways. At least
Hmm.
that's the common perception. Um, it's not always the case. I mean,
Yeah.
for people that have got other strengths and confidence and abilities, right? But if you're a small guy who's maybe not very smart or socially
Hmm.
able to make good relationships and stuff to get that kind of support, then what do you do?
Right.
It's like this is what I got. This is how I learn to survive, and that's kind of the difference I think that keeps people in those places. If you, and it's sad to say, but like something as simple as like intelligence, right? Okay, now I don't really have the problem solving skills to get beyond using the things that I knew
Mm-hmm.
that would fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Add the biological draw to that. But
Mm-hmm.
if I'm an addict and I don't have the problem solving skills to navigate the community and develop relationships and get support, that's gonna that's gonna end in recidivism.
Yeah.
That's gonna end in so
Yep.
those people need a lot of help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it is a really good metaphor because, the idea of you're building a shelter, you're building a house, and houses protect you. And that's really what they do. They protect us from the elements and whatnot. And we're all, from the beginning, we're building our ways that we protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe, get our needs met, wants met in the world. And so, yeah, like the metaphor says, I mean, you start out, maybe you use these materials that in the moment work,
Hmm.
or they work for a while, such as addiction, and I'm trying to think, yeah, stealing, selling drugs, uh, aggression, violence, lying, deceitfulness, all these things, and they work in your environment, and they work in kind of the, and then you construct this house, and you you know for you, it works, it's kept you safe, it's helped you, so why wouldn't you want to continue to go back to that? But at some point, when you start ending up in jail, or you end up with a DUI, or you end up, you can't keep a relationship for more than a couple months, or hold down a job. It's like you got to get new materials. You got to recognize
Hmm.
that these materials that I built this house with to get my needs met and keep myself safe don't work in the normal world, in the regular society. And if I want to, um, you know, if I want to become the person I want to be, I've got to tear this down and start again. You know, and
Let's talk about what keeps people in that though.
oh sure,
There's
I got a lot of thoughts on that.
yeah. So what keeps somebody so resistant to saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
this isn't working"? I mean, it's yeah. There's a lot of different things, and I kind of mentioned that a lot of these things, like for example, like a gang affiliation that's built
Mm-hmm.
into your identity, right? This is who I am. I wasn't able to amount to anything in on any of these other categories, but man, I am a hard motherfucker.
Yeah.
I couldn't be one of the white hat guys, so I got to be the villain, right? But I've got an identity here.
Mm-hmm. I
I'm
got yeah, I
somebody.
got status.
I've got status,
Yeah.
and so
And
in that,
respect, belonging.
so you tear that shit out,
Yeah.
which wasn't real to begin with, but
Well, it was real. It's just it doesn't work for you anymore.
yeah, but it's not truly who they are a lot of times. It's a persona that they've put on and they've built up and they've had to
Sure.
defend, which
Oh,
is
I see what you're saying.
exhausting
Mm-hmm.
over the years. But no, there are some, the status is real. But yeah, I mean, you take a look at something like drug dealing, right? For a lot of people, they're trying to get that need met of being wanted, right? And even though it's bullshit because everyone just wants a piece of what you got,
Mm-hmm.
it's fulfilling that need. People want me, they're coming over, and so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're more addicted to that than they are
Mm-hmm.
to the actual drugs or the money or whatever. And so, but I may have cut you off, but I mean like pride, maybe like those deep wounds, those things that we're protecting ourselves from. You come from, like for example, a place where people either directly or indirectly told you that you didn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't have any value,
Mm-hmm.
and so deep down inside, that's what's there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fucking mean anything, and so to remove this facade, remove this ideology that you've developed that keeps you safe,
Mm-hmm.
that you get people to believe through your intellectual superiority sometimes or
Yep.
whatever it is. All that's left is that kid who's like, I'm a nobody. And so that's a hard,
Mm-hmm.
and people will fight that, and they will go to their whole lives will fucking fall apart. They will destroy their relationships with people to keep that wall up, that defense up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times because they're lying to themselves.
Yeah.
Because deep down inside, yeah, they feel like I'm a nobody, but they're constantly, you know, they're bullshitting themselves that, you know, well, this is what narcissism is, right? Like, it ultimately comes from a low sense of self-worth. And so I inflate myself. I don't, you know, take blame. I don't take responsibility. I'm always either the hero or the victim. You know, and I can't own up to the things I've done wrong and whatnot, because then that would confirm that I am what I deep down feel like I am, which is a piece of shit. And so, yeah, I mean, you don't want to admit you're wrong, like I said, because that confirms you're a piece of shit. So,
Yeah.
I can't get rid of these things that clearly don't work, but I'm going to keep telling myself that they work, and it's everyone else that's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we see a lot
And,
in prison.
and people will, well, they speak that common language
Yeah.
of that defensive language where you blame other people. You are in a community of people that kind of hold on to those same ideas and support you in those things because they share the same sorts of insecurities, right?
Yep.
So you keep yourself secure through those people that are going to validate you and justify you, and it, you know, it can be a lonely place. And you see people hop from person to person to person. A lot of those folks with borderline personality disorders, they burn out a person so long, and then eventually the person can't take it anymore, and then they find somebody else. And there's always going to be somebody that they can find.
You know, it's funny
is
is they have this deep fear of abandonment, and then they have this very you know, this personality that it just repulses people.
Yeah.
And then then it becomes a self-fulfilling thing, because then people want to abandon them, which then reinforces this fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ironic that the things that they're using to try to keep people from leaving them are causing people to leave them.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot. It's like you got a lot of these guys that when they come in to talk to me, you know, they see me as this educated guy. I need to be impressed, you know. I want to show them how smart I am too, because you know, and so, and you know, I'm guilty of this stuff too, right? We all do this, so it's not like I'm making any kind of judgment, more of an observation. But it's like you take a picture frame and you say, okay, you hold it up to the part of yourself that you like or that you're most proud of. This is who I am. And a lot of guys, like, they'll try to get to you and tell you who they are before you can make a judgment about them and reject them. So I'm going to get to you before you get to me. I'm going to control your opinion of who I am. And when you do that, you know, a lot of healthy people, you might fool a couple people. Some people are a bit more sophisticated, politicians, and, you know, some of these folks that really have nothing to offer. And I guess there's a lot of people that fake their way into higher positions of leadership and that kind of thing. But anyway, getting back to that point is that, they ultimately will push people away, isolate themselves, and surround themselves by weak people who need somebody to kind of validate them because they're good at that, right? They say, you're amazing, you're great, until you trigger that fear of abandonment, and then you're the lowest of the low. It's so sometimes people just side with those folks just to stay out of the firing line.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a lot of people that we could think about that may or may not do that.
Yeah.
But we're going to leave that up to you to make that determination, because we already know that you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this too, I mean, so much of this, and this is my...
It's you.
Yeah. You're not supposed to say that.
Just don't stop being so defensive, Chris. You got to own it at some point.
Yeah. This also reminds me too of, so I do therapy that is specifically for PTSD. And essentially with this type of the understanding or the way that it conceptualizes PTSD is a disorder in recovery. So it's a disorder in the recovery of trauma. So normally you have a traumatic event, it really sucks, you're angry, you're sad, you're whatever, you have your normal kind of reactions to it, you struggle for a while, maybe you have some nightmares, maybe things kind of trigger you, but eventually you work through it, process it and whatnot, and through either conversations with friends or family or a therapist or whatever. And, the trauma eventually heals and it's kind of in the past and you move on in life, right? And then for people with PTSD, that doesn't happen. Those psychological wounds stay open. And the reason is because of avoidance. And if you look up like PTSD and you look up the symptoms, there's a classification of symptoms called avoidance. And what is avoidance? Avoidance is, avoiding the memories. You start having the memories. Oh, just shove them. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about that experience. I don't want to talk about
which almost
and
gives
you're
them more
always just
power.
shoving it down. Or it's substance abuse.
Yeah.
You're either drinking or whatever, using drugs or sex or gambling or whatever to just numb it and just always kind of keeping those dopamine hits and whatnot to avoid the pain and thinking about it. But yeah, and so you don't recover because you spend all this time avoiding, and a lot of these these ways that you end up avoiding are just more, they just make things worse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also part of they're part of the shelter, so to speak. Because a lot of these maladaptive things
avoidance.
that we are, are a result of trauma.
Yeah. I think too that sorry, I interrupted you a bit a minute ago, but it gives those things more power when you don't look at them. When you're afraid of them and you hide from them, it's like, a thought that you don't want to have, right? Whatever it is, it's like this awful thought that came to me and now it scares me, so I'm going to try to run away from it. Like somebody has panic attacks and they don't want to go to that place where they may have the panic attacks, which it builds this monster up and up and up rather than just like facing it head on and saying, okay, this is what this is. Rather than just talking to somebody about it and saying, hey, sexual abuse is like that with people. Those secrets that they keep a lifetime. And the misunderstandings that they just allow to fester and grow. And man, I think you were telling me a while ago about a guy that you had worked with in the past. What was that?
Yeah, so I met with him and he was telling me about how he was afraid to shower, and he was having these issues with that, and it was because it stems back to like, this is like probably 30 years ago or something like that. He was raped, and I don't know if it was in prison or like a juvie detention center or something like that, but he had been raped in another institution, and he never shared it with any of his family members. Yeah. No one knew about this. I think I might be the only person that knows about this. And I think I was going to... I'm trying to remember the original point I had in bringing that up. Because you were talking about like how these things build themselves up.
Yeah, they become more powerful.
Yes, they become more powerful. Yeah. And I mean, that this is decades and decades.
So
this is decades and decades, and this person still cannot shower. Like he does, but it's like when he tries to map everything out. When there will be like the fewest people around, there will be the fewest people in there, so on and so forth.
I have that trauma from junior high.
Yeah.
Yeah, I slipped and fell.
Oh, okay.
Looked up. Everyone was laughing at me.
Yeah. And you're afraid to go in
And
showers.
then there was a student teacher that was giving me a back rub.
Oh. That's not good.
Yeah.
Is this at
Rockford.
In North Carolina? I don't know.
It's Rockford.
Oh, okay.
North Carolina.
I don't know. I don't know what was the school where the there was the coach,
not Nassar.
No, not North Carolina. It was Penn State. That's what it was. Penn State. And there was one of the assistant coaches or something like that was giving guys massages and whatnot. And anyway, yeah,
But then,
it was
okay,
sad.
so
But
getting into what does that look like, right? You
hmm
have that trauma from your
hmm
past, a sexual trauma that you carry secretly,
hmm
that you've built up in your mind, and it just a secret that you keep
hmm
covering and covering and covering,
yeah,
and it's just continuing to seep out in different places. Um, like, what does that look like? I mean, I know for some people they will displace that anger on people that remind them of those folks, or
hmm
but yeah, they become really like homophobic or
hmm
there's a lot of guys that are in that place. Something has happened, and so or they're those secrets that they keep. Oh man, I'm gay, because I
right, yeah,
enjoyed it, and that's not the case at all. But now they're worried that this is going to be it, and so that secret continues to kind of build. When if they talk to somebody who
hmm
was they could be comfortable with and just like broke down, no, that just because this happened doesn't
right,
mean that you're gay, um, and so. But man, just to clear some of that stuff up. I mean, I think
hmm
about
yeah,
in in
airing it out, letting
in
the
my
sunlight
past
hit
with the
it. Yeah,
stigma on mental health.
yeah,
I think about my past. Like I used to have panic attacks a lot when I was going through some transitions in my life when I was young, and I didn't know what that was, but I
hmm
was terrified that I was going to be schizophrenic. I was going to be
yeah.
just crazy, and I didn't want to open that up and talk to somebody about that, and then just
Isn't
uh,
it interesting too? Like, because so like
I
if you
didn't I didn't
talked
want it
about
to be
it,
confirmed, right?
yeah,
You don't
right,
want your fears to be confirmed
yeah.
by somebody, and so go
Even though
ahead.
it doesn't matter, right? Because it's still going to be true whether it's confirmed or not.
Yeah,
And in fact, if you confirm it, like that's better ultimately. But yeah, we fear that,
you're
and it's
hiding you're hiding from that, and it's
hmm
worse than what you think it is. I just
yeah,
said this to a guy
and
not too long ago who was scared of paroling. And it's like it's never as bad or as good as you think it's going to be. That's been
hmm
something that served me in my life, thinking about whatever it is.
yeah,
But anyway, but like the damage that can be done by keeping these things within your limited um,
hmm
understanding or problem solving, especially as a young person, as
yeah,
a teenager, as so your conception of this, it's like a boogeyman.
hmm
And so yeah, and then you add like a like a so if you have like panic attacks and you come from a religious environment, well, that's
hmm
not a panic attack. That is a demon
sure,
possession. That is a demonic attack against you. And so then you get with these other people that are like throwing, I don't know, throwing a screwdriver at a nail.
well, that makes it even scarier too, right?
Well,
Because
yeah.
now it's not just something that is a dysfunction of your own physiology or your own
Mm-hmm.
reaction to a
Yeah.
a perceived threat. It is another entity that is outside of you
Yeah.
having control over you.
And I think within that framework, you can look at things and have a sense of empowerment and control, right? You can say,
Yeah.
well, God will give you the strength to get
Yeah.
through this. And
Sure. Sure.
but when you kind of eliminate, hey, no, your body is releasing adrenaline right now.
hmm
This is panic. This is when you
Cortisol. Yeah.
normalize it. When that, in addition to some good spiritual insight, could
hmm
be a lot better
hmm
than trying to handle some of these things from the spiritual. But that's a topic for another day.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
But because that's a deep one.
Yeah.
So okay, where are we at with this?
So yeah, we're talking about basically those maladaptive ways or structures that we use to build the quote unquote house, and how they work for a while. And I was saying that this just reminds me of one aspect of PTSD, which is to avoid. Just
Hmm.
keep that trauma at bay, whether it's mentally or not going certain places or substance abuse or whatever. And these are some of these avoidant techniques are once again maladaptive ways that or maladaptive things we build this, shelter with, you know.
And and the idea that we continue to go back to the same things
Yeah.
over and over again, these garbage bags and cardboard pieces, and just
Mm-hmm.
keep plopping them
Mm-hmm.
on and putting them on and
Mm-hmm.
putting them on.
Yeah, and also just the fact that it's scary to get rid of them. Right, and some of these things can be just comforting, and you've always done things a certain way, and it's scary to get rid of the things that have seemed, at least from your perspective, to work, and to try new things. Or sometimes it affects your ego. To admit that, oh geez, this doesn't work. This is wrong with this thing I've been doing for years. It's actually really destructive.
So let's talk about like that rebuilding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're in a place now. I can't use drugs, right?
Sure.
I
You
ne-
finally realize that, oh, I do have this problem, or
so my whole identity has really been based on my relationships with everybody has
mm-hmm.
been based on substance abuse, and that was what I had in common with all these people. So ultimately, I can't have anything, any relationships with these people. I'm alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hard place to find yourself, to give up your defensiveness and to say, hey, I'm wrong, or to say, this is why I'm doing this. Um, that's a lot of work. And depending on who you are, you might need a lot of support. I mean, for some
Mm-hmm.
people, you get redirected, you gain some awareness, and
Mm-hmm.
you see what this stuff is, and you're like, oh, why the hell didn't I see that sooner?
Right.
And then you're able to move forward with that. You get the formula, you carry on with your life, and you're doing well. But for some other folks, they need a bit more of that. And and it goes deep when you don't have anybody in your life who's ever really been a positive, loving person.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know how to start that engagement with somebody. And so how many people will just give up on you or turn tail on you? And the people that are willing to go the distance with you likely aren't the most healthy folks.
Right. Yep.
And so, what becomes of some of those people that really, yeah, that need that help and that assistance? And there's
Yeah, I think you know a piece of it is how much I think you really want to change. I mean, I really do think that some of it is just as simple as that. Um, you have to be at the point where, yeah, and people call it, your rock bottom. I don't necessarily think you have to be at a place of rock bottom. I think,
something's got to motivate you.
yeah, but you have to be at a place of like, I am sick of this. I am just done, and
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I don't give a crap about like this person I am. I don't want to be that person anymore. Um, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's like, how do you get to people to that place? You can't. I don't know that you can really get people to that place.
I think you
Um,
have to underline what is actually going on with them.
yeah.
The things that keep them from getting help are those deep issues. Addiction becomes the
Right.
primary issue after a while,
Yeah.
right? And but what led to that were all these things that we're talking about, this family
Mm-hmm.
of origin
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And so if people can start to identify those things correctly, if they can start to see what their shit is, right? Like we talked about with that awareness thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then I think then you're setting your sights on the real target.
Mm-hmm.
I've got abandonment issues. I've got trauma. I've got
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem issues. I've got
Anger,
anxiety.
problems. Yeah.
I've got mood issues, depression. But yeah, it's it's
Yeah. And then you still have those people who they do recognize that, and then they want to come to someone like us and say, "Fix me."
Yeah.
Yeah, like make it better. And it's like, yeah, I can't do that. You've got to want to do that, and it's all it is it's scary. It's I don't want to say it's all on you, but it's a lot of it is yeah. This is something you got to do. Nothing that anyone else can do for you. You know.
And it depends on where they're at and what their capabilities are. And so for some
Yeah.
people, they may never get these concepts. They may never understand this. And so if for them, it just comes down to that just rote understanding. It's a black or white thing. And I think that's why a lot of people hang out in NA and AA places. Some people move on from that. They're like, I'm once an addict, always an addict. No, I've learned moderation. I know how to deal with this. But
Right.
for some people, it has to be very black and white. Right, that's the course that they have to take. It's just like, you just don't do it. And all the understanding in the world isn't going to matter. It has to do with where they're at, what their capacity is. And so I think some people don't have the capacity to have empathy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you deal with a sex offender who they're never going to have empathy. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, my angle is not going to be to try to squeeze out this empathy that's in you. That's just never going to be there. We're going to have to take a different approach. The approach that we're going to have to take is, let's look at consequences.
Yeah.
If you're just thinking about yourself, how is this going to affect you
Right.
and what you want? So, whatever it is. So for some people, yeah, they just... It's got to be, there's got to be a different approach for whoever it is that comes along, and whatever works for them, works for them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's complicated, isn't it?
It is extremely complicated.
Yeesh.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, it does sound very counterintuitive, I think, to most people to think that you can have little, minimal empathy and still. And be like a sex offender or a criminal and have minimal empathy, but still go out and function in life, right? Because we think like, well, you have to be able to like recognize that what you're doing is actually hurting another person. You have to like actually, it has to like be absorbed for you to actually make a real change. But it is true that is not necessarily the case. And yeah, I mean, some of us just don't have that moral development.
Yeah.
That moral development stays down at the level of like, what's wrong is what gets me in trouble and hurts me.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot like working with a kid.
It is.
I mean, and there's a lot of these people are, they're in that place of being childlike, and so there's laws for a reason. Right? If we took away all of our laws, what percentage of our population would follow them merely by,
right.
for moral reasons that, they abide by? Forget it. And that includes me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal something. And so, yeah, I think
that's interesting. You think you need laws for you not to steal things?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. At some point, yeah.
At some point, sure, I could see that.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, there'd be different, but I don't know. I guess I'd have to be put to the test. I'll never, assume that I'm going to be able to handle that. Well, if there were no consequences?
Yeah.
If there were no consequences for the things that you do.
I mean, there's always going to be consequences, though, right?
So legal consequences.
Legal, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to go steal from a gas station or something like that, just for the simple fact that, well, someone owns this gas station. They're trying to run a business. They're trying to function. It's good for our community to have a business because that creates tax revenue. It's good for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of how I think, which is a much more developed moral system than I guess a lot of people have. But
yeah, well, we eventually got to that point where we can think in that way, but
so no, I mean, unless I was starving, I'm not gonna probably steal from, anybody. But yeah, that's me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like to think that I would be cool like that too.
But I mean, speeding. Oh shoot,
Well, there you go.
If there's no cop around, I'm driving you know,
If it doesn't make
10
sense to
over
me, I'm not do
minimum.
it.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of all the different.
and I suppose that's where my moral, you know, where I kind
I
of like the bottom of it, as long as I'm not hurting anybody, then who, you know.
I get a kick out of like the things that like I will be. I'll have integrity about, and the things
Mm-hmm.
that I won't. Like I wouldn't steal something that was worth $50,000, but I will compromise my morality for something that's like 75 cents or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. I
Or
mean,
$30 or whatever. I don't know. The other day I was walking out of the store with some glue in my hand, and they didn't have what I was looking for, but I needed glue. And I walk out. I'm like, all right, gonna put the glue in. I mean, at one point, it was just for the sake of my children. I walked out with a watermelon once.
mm.
And I mean, it was in the cart. I guess we didn't scan it or something. And I got back to the car and I was like,
Do you accidentally steal very often?
not that I know of.
Not that you know of.
I just, I think it doesn't happen enough that I have a memory of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what it is. It's not that I'm overflowing with.
Like open up the cat. Oh, honey, who put this Dom Perignon in here?
But
Where'd that come from?
I probably would have walked away with the watermelon if my kids were not in the car because, man, come on, walking back into the store with
Yeah,
a
for a
watermelon.
watermelon. Yeah.
And Lord knows on the other end of that, they got me for something. They've charged me twice for something. That's how I rationalize
That's how you're at. Yeah.
in my head.
That's how a criminal rationalizes.
But still, but I was like, children, watch your father bring this watermelon back into the
that's
store.
good though.
Yeah. But it happens from time to time. It's like, I don't have time for this. I did it once with a piece of trim from Home Depot, and I held on to the damn piece of trim for like 3 months before I eventually brought it back. I stole this. Sorry. You probably don't carry it anymore. But anyway. Yeah, so I guess
they never give up their trim. They always have the same trim there. But anyway.
We're all kind of, and you look at, I always bring it back to this religious thing. The people's understanding of their faith is, very rudimentary and simplistic, and I have to accept that. I understand. Okay, this is where you're at. This is what makes sense to you. This is how you've learned to navigate this stuff. Whatever. Whatever group you find yourself in, there's people that simplify things
Yeah.
in a terrible way. But yeah, so I guess, looking at these approaches, it's going to be different for everybody, finding different ways to meet your needs in an effective way, and whether or not you can understand what's really going on. Maybe it just comes down to following the formula to get what you want, and really support is, we've talked about the idea that you can have somebody with a cognitive impairment raised in a very loving and supporting environment, and they'll do well. They'll maybe even have their own apartment, or
Sure.
be in some independent living and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And you can have somebody else who's really on the ball, who was raised in absolute hell
Mm-hmm.
and has so much going for them and can't even function.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that are there to assist and carry folks through, it's just totally something. We look at those guys that are the serial killer types,
Mm-hmm.
or the psychopaths who it's that perfect combination of genetics and environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you got some bad genetics, and you got some really bad environments, and that just makes the perfect storm. Whereas if you had the bio with some nurturing, good environments, I got to wonder how many people that had been adopted had kind of been able to avoid just complete destruction based on entering into a
Yeah,
different
it'd be
environment.
interesting to know what the statistics are with that. I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine being adopted, but I mean, I've known several adopted people in my life, and that seem to be, functioning well, and they love their adopted parents, and some of them, maybe met their birth parents later on in life, and some still have no idea to this day, but they're doing well. At least from all accounts I can tell, you know.
Wasn't it that? But didn't your cat disappear that one time? You?
What?
No, I'm joking. You want to take a break and get another beer?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. Hopefully our lighting looks better.
Yeah.
We're not as washed out.
I
It is.
think it does.
I've got a little more sun. We don't look as pasty and as white as we once did. Weren't you talking about like blinding people?
With my pasty vampire-like skin.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a lot of suntan lotion. You still got to rub in. No, that's my skin.
The Ostrander family was lost at sea. There was nothing they could do.
Except take their shirts off.
But then he realized it was a full moon, and with the reflection of his torso, the Coast Guard was able to find him and his family and return him to safety. However, one of the Coast Guard captains had ocular degeneration as a result.
Macular degeneration.
Ocular, well,
Macular.
macular, big macular degeneration, lattice degeneration.
Lattice degeneration?
I don't know. It's lattice. They told me that I have like little holes in my eyeballs. So
Really?
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a fairly common thing, I guess.
Oh.
But what they do is I guess it could like lead to a detached retina or something.
Oh,
But
okay.
I don't know if there's a ton of science behind it, but you talk about trust. You never trust anyone more than a guy who's poking in your eyes.
Yeah.
And they like shoot these little lasers in your eye. It feels like little needles.
Or giving you a vasectomy, but yeah.
No, more the eyes.
Yeah?
For sure, more than that, yeah.
I suppose, yeah, it'd be worse to lose your eyes than... Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that, though. I had a bad experience, so...
With a vasectomy or your eyes?
With a vasectomy.
My cousin has a great... We could do that. We're going to do a Halloween special.
Halloween special.
And we'll save that one for later, because my cousin has a great vasectomy story. A Sri Lankan vasectomy.
Was the anesthesia just meditation?
Yeah. I just want you to calm down. Just calm down. And they like, pull this thing out. They were using to cut down, what are those giant fruits, the yuccas, or what are those? What are those things? They're giant freaking fruits. I can't remember the name of it.
They use this in the vasectomy?
No, I was joking though. But no, I mean, some guy comes from the outside. They're like, "Where did it go?" And the guy like hands it through the window. As this, big giant fruit fall. They got fruit that can kill you.
Oh yeah.
Down there. That's just Sri Lanka, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. So
Jinx.
Not to keep that in there. You think of something to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about starting, having to tear down the house, why that can be problematic, why you might resist it, and then we're talking about building back up. But I mean, you've obviously, it's a lot of work. You gotta want it, but also, I mean, resources are a problem, especially for people that come, from the background of the people we deal with in prison. You don't typically have a lot of resources. Especially, I mean, it's interesting in the prison world. I mean, it really kind of depends, I suppose, on the facility you're at, depending on the level of mental health opportunities there are. I think we actually do a really good job compared to other facilities. I mean, we got a lot of groups. Yeah.
I think there's a lot. I mean, let's face it. If you're willing to utilize the resources that are available, there's some good stuff. Because you see the guys that there's some guys that are like, this place does nothing for you,
right?
And you got the other guys that are just killing it.
Yes,
taking every opportunity that they possibly can, and so
because it's all about perception, really.
Yeah,
so much of it is about perception.
But there is there's just a lack of And maybe it's just because the people are so consumed with just making it and
Hmm.
surviving in life that they don't have much of an opportunity to really support the communities that they're living in,
Right.
right? And so, but PT. Maybe we discussed this before. This is like I always hammer on, but I was a youth worker at a church, and there's like
Hmm.
this handful of people that probably aren't even the most qualified to do these things, but they're available. And
Right.
but there's a minority of the people that are doing the work wherever you find yourself. So like the PTA, my wife's on the PTA at the kids' school. Like there's a handful of people that are doing these things,
Right.
and those are the ones that are really making the difference. So to my experience, um, but like looking at the kids in your community, it's like, do we really reach out to them? Do we give them a place to get those needs met? Yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of being our brother's keeper out there. Um,
Hmm.
and maybe that's just our culture.
Yeah.
Maybe a big part of that. But yeah, I always said if the kids don't find it in the home or in the community, they'll find it somewhere else. They'll
Hmm.
find some way to get that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's at school.
Yeah, sports has saved a
Yeah,
lot of kids.
sports. Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so, but yeah, that's a huge part of it, and because I've seen it before. You guys get out and they got nothing going for them, and next thing
Hmm.
you know, you see them in the news, and it's like, oh boy,
Yep.
that's that guy.
Hmm.
But
But yeah, it is kind of a both and though, because I understand like rural communities. There's out there is so much less opportunity and resources in like small tiny towns, but for the most part, there are quite a few resources out there, and you but yeah, you've got to be willing to utilize them. And just going back to the early example at our prison, I mean, it's like sometimes you got guys who are just like, oh, there's nothing here, and you guys, whatever, they complain, and then you've got the other guys who are doing like every group they can, and they're looking for opportunities, and yeah, it's so much, like I said, it's about perception.
perception, ability,
Yeah, perspective, whatever.
yeah.
Um,
So I want to talk
and
about. Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, but I mean, the great thing, and I'll tell guys this when I'm working with them, and especially when we're talking about like, things like cognitive behavioral therapy, and how much your core beliefs about yourself, the world, other people, play into how you see everything, to play into your thought life, play into all of that, and the cool thing is your perception is changeable. You know, the amount of control you perceive yourself having over your own life can change. It's not fixed in stone, because it's ultimately it is your perception. It's plastic. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's and that's good news. You know. So anyway,
Yeah, yeah. It's your reality.
it's like you've got to, but yeah, hmm yeah,
So
perception's reality,
is my
right?
reality aligned with reality? Right? Is my perception of reality
Yep.
aligned with reality? Right.
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about like resilience. I guess there's this idea
Oh
that
yeah. Hmm.
when all this comes down, when you have to surrender all of your
Yeah.
defenses.
Hmm.
Um, there's a. I'll jump back and say that to talk about the process of doing this
Hmm.
is a long process. The process of
Hmm.
growing and learning new ways to do things, finding different support groups, basically reinventing yourself in your life. That is a long process that will be hard. And looking at it with those expectations will serve you well, rather than just wanting to give up and saying, "Oh, but
Yeah.
this is take a look at it. I got to start my life out from nothing. How long is that going to take?" Right?
Right. Yeah.
That's gonna be a second.
Hmm.
Um, but jumping into also that resilience, that thing that you have learned how to survive, and that is a skill that you will never lose.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've done it before, you can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can do it better than somebody else. You know, you think about, like, I think about, and maybe this is me talking myself up, but I mean, I came from some crappy situations. I mean, I got screwed up, drugs and crime and whatever. And, I was working at a group home shortly thereafter. And I didn't, I was kicked out of school a number of times. And so I didn't have a whole lot of education
Mm-hmm.
outside of, what I learned in the streets and whatever, and things from the home. I'm not going to say that I was an orphan by any means, but there's a lot of people that were ahead of me in those environments, and I think I got a lot of judgment as a result of that. I was rough around the edges, and but I think about this, and I told somebody this. I had something though that none of those people had had. I had some perspective. I'd been through some shit and some grime, and I learned some valuable lessons, and I was able to catch up with the academic part of things, with the maturity part of things.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, I surpassed a lot of the people that I had worked with at the
Right.
time that passed so much judgment on me. It was because I had that strength and that resilience and that experience that allows me to see things. That gives me a whole different perspective, a whole new wealth of knowledge. And so I always tell people, it's like you can reach into places that other people can't go. You can touch people that I could never even do,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what makes the difference most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so build on that, right?
Yeah.
To take that, and you may just be more effective. You just might be more powerful. You may have more to contribute than someone who just like slid right into academia.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to my nephew's graduation. The dean of the school, I guess he used Chat GPT. I guess that's what they said to do his speech.
To write his speech.
But I was like, this guy's got nothing. He's got no
Yeah.
wisdom. He's got no real like applicable good. He's just talking out his ass. And I've always felt that I had that value inside of me, but I've never been able to communicate that until I've gone further down the line in that journey to grow through that. But yeah, there's a difference. There's a value that comes through this experience of surviving,
Yeah.
of getting through these things, the empathy, the understanding that you get.
Do you feel like this guy had like not what?
Yeah, I mean, it was just fluff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ChatGPT. So, I mean, but
Well,
still,
yeah.
but I mean, that was better than what he could do. So there you go. But yeah, I mean, there's something about that. I always
Was it authentic, or it was just like
No,
you
man,
haven't
yeah.
experienced life?
Yeah, it was just kind of
Yeah.
a very generic way of doing things. But yeah, when you've lived
Mm-hmm.
a bit, when you've seen some things, yeah, you've got something to offer that nobody else has.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a value in it that people, that they don't always recognize. And it's only, when they reach a certain point or into a certain place, and sometimes they never get recognized for the things that they have. Like whatever. An artist who's truly mad and has to like work twice as hard to understand like the academic portion of this stuff, but like comes out of that with like something that's truly exceptional, that true talent, that true value. I don't know. I'm not to say that that's always the case. I have a tendency to, in the past anyway, be more critical of the type A's and the academics and all that. And it's because I felt like I'd been, as being a more creative, right-brained dude, like
Yeah.
I was always being criticized and judged, and so that's a reaction. That's what I learned, a reaction out of the defensiveness.
Yeah.
But no, I realized that we all have those things that we can contribute. But when you're in an environment where people only value this kind of thing, this one route to get this result, then I don't know. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna, kind of go back to resilience, um, because I mean, if you've survived, it does. It shows that you're resilient. You're still here. You've been through some shit, and you're still breathing. And I mean, it resilience is one of the key things that contribute to success. It's probably the number one thing that contributes to success. Resilience and grit.
Hmm.
And I don't know how much different. I think grit, I guess, is more. I don't know.
Sports.
Well, only because of the Lions, yeah. But no, I mean, yeah, grit is the ability to be resilient. I don't know,
I
but
think it's a being tough, being
yeah,
being
the
assertive,
toughness to allow
being
you to be resilient. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and those are really important qualities. Probably like one of the most important qualities as far as like why people are successful. I think there's a book called How Children Succeed, and that's like the main point of it.
Mm.
It's like based on a lot of research. Yeah, just looking at trying to ask that question like why are some kids that come from the same place, the same background, the same whatever struggles, why are some successful and why are some not? And yeah, it does it. A lot of it is about resilience. So yeah, if the more you've survived, you know, it shows you have that resilience. You have like the basic component, the foundation to really,
Hmm.
to rebuild.
Yeah, to not give up, to keep going, and
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
and that's yeah, like you said, in anything, in learning, right? I have to come up against this thing that I'm completely frustrated with, and then continue. Right? Anybody that's excellent at anything has thrown down their tools or whatever and
Yeah.
screamed in frustration,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
ah!
Yep.
And then picked it up again and said, "Okay, let's do it again
Right.
until I can do it." It's madness
Yeah. For sure.
sometimes.
For sure.
So, in addition to that, I wanted to highlight, and we talked about when we were writing this, the idea that um, some of these survival skills are good for a certain place and time.
Yeah. 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 Hmm.
And so I have garbage bags. I have some plastic wrap that I may need in the event of another tornado that hits my house,
Hmm.
right? And that's the time to use those things.
Hmm.
I may need to punch somebody in the face someday. I
Hope you
mean,
don't have to, but yeah.
no, but I mean, again, there's a time and place for those things. And so the ability, like, I think about these guys that are in the prison system or that have been in the streets. I talked to you about, sometimes I feel like walk into a Starbucks in Ada or something. I
Hmm.
feel like a hard motherfucker. I look around. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
these guys are all bitch ass. But they feel that
Yuppies.
way.
Yeah.
They feel that way about a lot of people. It's like
Yeah.
I've come from some heavy shit. You don't have a fucking clue,
Hmm.
and they're gonna be a hell of a lot better in surviving that kind of environment than
Yeah.
I am. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
I can learn, um, but they've learned how to deal with that in that certain time and place. And if I, want to, one of the things I was going to add to this, but I didn't want to exhaust the metaphor, is that if you took that shack that you built and you moved it into a neighborhood of nice houses, they're going to
Right.
call somebody and have you condemned, right?
Right.
That cactus example that I used in the awareness
Hmm.
short there,
Hmm.
I put that next to the ivies and the ferns, and they're going to be like, dude.
Yeah.
But in the desert, that cactus is going to thrive. It's going to do well.
Hmm.
And so the challenge is to not use those things all the time. To know when, okay, maybe this guy, maybe
Yeah.
the badass
Yeah. Yeah.
is
It's kind of
going
interesting. It's like you've in one case you might got the person who's just kind of had it easy all their life. No abuse, nice parents, nice schools, everything kind of is just hunky dory. all through life. They get all like the knowledge and the skills taught to them, and then they've got to go out and do it. And then you've got the person who life was shit and they've been through all the hard stuff and they know how to navigate all that stuff, but they don't have the knowledge and the
Yeah.
skills.
That's kind of what I was talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah. Yeah. And so it's like once they just, the knowledge and the skills are just, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
Getting that, it's actually living it,
And building that character. Yeah. It's
So it's like, oh yeah, okay, you got the easy stuff done, but now you've got the really hard shit, and this person's coming like through all the hard shit. Like, okay,
so let's not minimize that for these folks. And it's easy to, and I think that amplifies that idea. Right? I'm going to become more of that because I feel like marginalized by this population.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's cool stuff.
All right. Well, gonna wrap it up.
Bum-ba-dum-bum. Yeah. Got any jokes? This is the end of the podcast. This is the end of the podcast.
Got to get some music to open and close with.
We're working on this stuff. We're busy.
It's a work in progress.
I care about my kids. So, sorry to like
is what it is.
the 5 people out there who are like, I love that. And we love you.
All right.
We should use people's names that we know. Just give them a shout out. We'll support your business. If you got a business, we'll just,
Or if you have a brewery.
If you have a brewery. My cousin said it's funny that like the hardest word to say when you're drunk is brewery.
Brewery.
Brewery. All right. Well, till next time,
All right,
folks.
Take care.
See ya.
Thanks.